My name is Tammy Camp, and I'm the CEO and founder of Stronghold. And I have a couple of housekeeping notes for you guys before we get started. All right, so in the event of an emergency, please use the exit doors and go to, thank you. Watch this gentleman in the back. And go to the meeting point outside. I'm not sure where that is. Jules, where's the meeting point outside? All right. um, let's see. And if you need to go to the loo, there's a men's and a female bathroom here. So feel free to use these facilities. At the very end of this meetup, we are going to be giving away some free Stellar Lumens on behalf of the Stellar Development Foundation for your time and to kind of introduce you into the world of cryptocurrency and blockchain. So please stick around for that. And tonight's presentation will be filmed and it will be on YouTube in about a week. So let's get started. All right, so a little about me. I first started my cryptocurrency career or journey in 2011 when I went to a program called Singularity University in Silicon Valley, located in NASA Ames. There was a famous cryptographer there called Ralph Merkle, and he, taught us about Bitcoin and blockchain, and I was fascinated since then. In 2013, I started building Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin miners, and would program them and connect them to mining pools. But it wasn't until in 2014 is when I really started becoming a professional in blockchain, and I served as Stellar's first head of growth, actually, in 2014, where I oversaw the airdrop. So back in the day, we were giving lumens away for free to anyone who could validate their identity on Facebook, and so we grew that network very, very quickly. It was about 4 million users in 4 weeks. So at that time, that's when I met Sean, because Sean was the first USD New Zealand and Australian gateway onto the Stellar network. So we worked very closely with him then, and that's when I had come to New Zealand for the first time in 2014 and had met him at that time. A little after that, I was a partner at 500 Startups, which is a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. So I, invested in startups and ran their growth and marketing curriculum there. And then I decided to jump back in the saddle and become operational again, and that's when I founded Stronghold. So thank you so much for coming tonight. And I wanted to tell you a little about Stronghold before I hand it over to Sean. So Stronghold is basically it's a financial services platform that's native to distributed ledger technology. So what is distributed ledger technology? It's AKA the blockchain. All those things that you've been hearing and reading about. And what is really the blockchain? Simply put, the blockchain is a database. It's a new type of database, and people have to agree what goes inside the database, and they have to come to a consensus. And once they agree on what goes into the database, it's kind of cryptographically stored in there, so it's secure. So very simply put, our technology is built on this type of technology, and we think it's faster, better, cheaper, and more secure. Yeah. So we're best known for our product, Stronghold USD, which is a stablecoin that is endorsed by IBM. So we are working with IBM, launching a new platform called WorldWire next year, where we are the USD settlement layer for a network of banks. So, for example, if you wanted to send New Zealand dollars back to your friend in the US, you would use our USD token, like you would deposit New Zealand dollars into your bank here, and then it would convert over the Stellar network, and then we would be the endpoint for the US dollars that your friend would go and collect it at. And so we're kind of launching a very similar network like that with IBM next year. So I just kind of wanted to give you some use cases on Stronghold USD, because not only can it be used by financial institutions like IBM, but it can be used for payments and trading, like trading other fiat currencies, so like Filipino pesos and Nigerian liras and Chinese yuan, so it can be used to trade those assets on the Stellar network, or even cryptographic assets like Bitcoin and Ripple and Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash. Okay? And so in the next couple of weeks, we're launching our platform, our new platform, Stronghold Trading. And what's really, really unique about it is that it's the first trading platform that it kind of sits on top of a decentralized exchange. That decentralized platform is Stellar still. What we really like about it is that this blockchain technology is very specific for payments in financial institutions, and it's not as scary to the regulators because it has regulatory technology already built into the systems, into the protocol. So, for example, you can pre-authorize a transaction before it goes through. So if I had like a security or a bond, and it was only available to accredited investors, well, you could tag that asset, and you could make sure that that person qualifies to own it before they even purchase it, so it doesn't fall into the hands of the wrong person, right? And banks love this because, probably a lot of the press likes to cover a lot of negative things about, how you can like launder money and things from cryptocurrency. But this particular blockchain is really unique in that it has the regulatory technology built into it, and that's why we really, really love it. And unlike other centralized trading platforms, because it's on Stellar's blockchain, all of the transactions are transparent. So again, this is what makes the regulators really happy, because you can go in and you can audit these transactions in real time and understand what amounts are being sent over the network. So we really, really think that that's important. And as far as we know, we're the only trading platform that is on distributed ledger technology that does have a regulatory framework. So we're really happy to be here in New Zealand because we've found a home for our regulatory framework, or one that we can work around. So we're really happy to be here. And this is a little preview of our trading platform that's going to be live in the next couple of weeks. We have Tammy and Andrew here, raise your hand, and Juliana, who helps support all our engineers that are going to be building this. And I'm going to leave it up to Sean to explain the platform APIs. Right? Oh, actually, one more thing. I did want to talk to you guys about our future efforts of expanding into Christchurch. So we have a couple of other. We're owned by a parent company in San Francisco. We're venture backed from Silicon Valley venture investors, and so we have a lot of our operations out of Christchurch, and in future funding rounds, we plan on expanding our team here in Christchurch because we love it here so much. And these are the roles that we'll be filling probably at the end of next year. So if you know anyone or if you're interested, please talk to Juliana, and she can help direct you to the status of those roles. All right, and now I'm going to hand it over to Sean.
Thanks very much, Tammy. I'm going to try and remove this. I hope it goes okay. I won't walk around though. Kia ora everyone. It's great to be talking here again in Christchurch. I think last time was in May of this year. I grew up down in Ashburton, so just down the road. So it's nice to be back, for Christmas time and to see the family. So I'm going to be here for a couple of months before I head back over to busy SF. I first got into cryptocurrency in 2011. I came across Bitcoin because it was being used as a donation mechanism for WikiLeaks after Visa pulled their funding, right? And I was at uni at the time, threw a bit of money into Mt. Gox. It took maybe 3 weeks to get the money over there, over in Japan. Just shows you how bad those old payment rails are, right? And that's something we're trying to work on now. Sold out really early to pay off the student loan, so I didn't become a millionaire on that, unfortunately. But as Tammy mentioned, a few years later, 2014, right at the start, Ripple open sourced. And I thought that was really interesting because now we've got blockchain, a blockchain infrastructure that isn't necessarily built for the transfer of this new magic money, right? Yes, it has the Ripple currency inside it, and that has utility, but now we can move other sorts of value on it. And so when Stellar opened up mid-2014, that was also very exciting to start working with them. So I think almost exactly 4 years ago, I met Tammy in Auckland, and we started off a professional relationship with Stellar. Essentially, back then, I was doing out of Christchurch, actually, starting off in Dunedin, what we now call stable coins, right? I did New Zealand, Australian, and the US dollar. You were moving traditional units of value that people understand and people can actually use, but on blockchain technologies. It was a little bit early. I didn't really validate the market before I went out and did it, but it was a fun wee technical exercise and I met some great people doing it, right? So tonight I wanted to talk about the platform APIs, which underlie both our own products and many of our partner integrations. I just want to canvass the audience really quickly to see who we've got in the room, who would describe themselves as technical, not necessarily blockchain, but some sort of software background. Right, just a few. So this originally formed a webinar that was aimed at a technical audience. So this is going to be an interesting little journey, and I'll try not to end up in the weeds. So platform API. That's APIs may or may not mean anything to you. Essentially, it's an interface for people to plug their own systems in an automatic fashion. So if you're running a position of sale system, or if you're running some sort of supply chain software or banking back-end systems, you could have your software developers build out and connect to our systems and exchange information, and that helps you do things, right? So what do our APIs do? It's programmatic access to blockchain networks. Currently, we're quite well known for being bolted on top of Stellar, but we are interfacing with multiple networks. And the three main things we do there is we trade different types of value between each other. You can transfer them between people, and you can also just store any sort of arbitrary data on You can manipulate different kinds of value. We still do have support for cryptocurrencies because those are still used a lot and they have various utility, but we are focusing quite heavily on traditional currencies, right? The stuff that everyone knows. US dollar, we'd love to get New Zealand dollar going, and we are looking at that, Australian dollar, all those sorts of things, right? Because that's what most people use every day, right? And the really important thing about our APIs is with a single integration, you are connecting into whichever blockchain you've kind of configured. So instead of having to write, having your business, your developers write code for months on end into one blockchain just for, a new blockchain to be released 2 months later. Oh, damn, this one's got better features. I will now spend, another 2 months with my engineers building into this one and, tens of thousands of dollars. You're now just making a single integration. So one integration, one time sync, and you're able to access different blockchains as they come out, and we support them, right? There are a lot of valid reasons for using multiple blockchains at once, for instance. This is a question that we hear a lot. What protocol do I choose, right? Many of you will have heard of Bitcoin, right? It's the granddaddy of all the other ones out there. It's a decade old. It's really quite old now. And even though it came into the spotlight maybe, even 1 year ago, it's been out for a long time. Compared to the others, it's slow, it's still quite expensive, and its value swings wildly. People are speculating, they're taking a gamble on it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We had Ethereum come out as kind of a version 2.0 where now you can almost write computer software into the blockchain and have it do things in a secure manner. So you could enforce contracts on it. That's what was really interesting about that. And then later on, the two on the right, Ripple and Stellar, well, now we have arbitrary sorts of value transferring around. There's heaps that you can choose from, and I threw up a whole lot of logos there just to show you that it just gets ridiculous, right? And this is a tiny sliver of the literally thousands of protocols and coins that you can choose from. All these ones here are different variants of Bitcoin itself. There are 72 active versions of Bitcoin currently, right? So even within these own communities, they can't decide on what the best thing is. They basically work in very similar ways. Some of them say we'll put more transactions into each information packet, or we'll do things slightly faster or slightly slower. But really, it doesn't matter exactly which one it is in terms of which one has to survive long term. You choose the one that is right for your particular use case, or choose all of the ones that are right for your particular use case. So what did we end up going with? It was Stellar, because it is perfectly verticalized for payments, transactions in the context of financial institutions, which is really what we target, right? So this is low cost, instant settlement. And these are the main features that we really liked, right? Multi-currency was important for us because we didn't just want to be transferring Bitcoin or lumens or Stellar or whatever it is, right? We want to be able to move around different assets, tokens. It could be, you could move house titles on these things, for instance. Speed, we like Stellar because it's 3 to 5 second settlement between two parties. It's very cheap. 1 cent does about 100,000 transactions. It's relatively fast. Bitcoin on the best of days, I'll be generous and say it can do, 15 transactions a second. That's quite generous, I think. Whereas Stellar has been tested at 1,000. We think it can do about 3,000 in good network conditions at the moment. That's still pretty slow generally, right? But for payments, it's great in a sort of cross-border world, right? That would sustain it. If you tried to run Visa on these things, that's still not going to be good enough. So these are fast enough for the specific use cases that Stronghold and our clients care about. We're not saying it's perfect. Safety, Stellar's quite interesting in the way its consensus works. Some of you might have heard of Bitcoin mining, and that has some problems maybe with tax and regulatory issues. Stellar actually allows you to choose which other network nodes you care about. And for parties like IBM, for instance, their bank clients would want to know who are verifying their transactions on this network. So in these blockchains, you have all of these nodes all over the world reading your transactions and digitally signing off on them. There's various ways that happens, but one of the problems for a bank is if a bad transaction has happened, say they accidentally released funds to a terrorist, whose fault is that? Who's actually signed off on that transaction on the blockchain? There's some liability problems here all of a sudden, right? Stella's great because you can just put down a list of who you trust to sign off on your transactions, and in some cases that makes the regulators, that appeases them, right? So you could say, on the Stella network, I care if IBM signs off on my transactions, if Bank X signs off on my transactions, if Stronghold signs off on my transactions. So that's a very useful property for us. And as Tammy mentioned, the compliance piece, we're able to identify every single person that holds any of the assets that we issue into the network, which is obviously very important for things like anti-money laundering, countering the financing of terrorism. And those are really big impediments for traditional financial institutions getting into this space, right? Because if they receive money that has just come from a drug transaction or money going out to buy a nuclear weapon, obviously, terrible for them. So what is one of the functions we do on Stella? And Tammy very briefly alluded to this. We move value on and off of the network. So in the case of Stronghold US dollar, what that means is we essentially accept US dollar as a deposit into an account that, with our custodian, a qualified custodian in the United States, and we take that and we turn it into a token on top of the network. So the value of that US dollar is backed by the reserve in a bank account somewhere, held on trust for the token holder, but now you have essentially US dollar that you can move in 3 to 5 seconds. You can do the trade on blockchain. So that's why people are starting to become interested in these sorts of things. And very loosely, the industry now seems to call these asset-backed tokens or stable coins, some of the terminology you may have heard of before. So why do we think people should be using Stronghold's APIs, and why do we have people starting to integrate into them now? It's one of the big use cases is the programmatic access to Stronghold's US dollar token. As far as we're aware, all of the other stable tokens that are out there require you to interact with the blockchain directly to manipulate them. So if you wanted to use one of the other stable coins, you would have to bring on blockchain developers, which are very expensive and highly sought after at the moment. You would have to train them in your particular business, and then spend quite a protracted amount of time developing out your solution. What we're saying to people is, you don't need that. It's more like a general sort of banking integration. Don't make them learn the specifics. That's not important for your business. Have regular developers who are already working in your business very quickly integrate into this. But under the hood, it's utilising the blockchain technology. The fact that it's on the blockchain technology isn't the important bit, it's all the benefits, right? So don't get bogged down by those details. We support 3 different protocols at the moment, Stellar, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. We are expanding those, and we look to be launching quite a few new ones in Q1 of next year. And those are the currencies we support. So we've got some crypto ones there, as well as the United States dollar. Tammy talked a little bit about this before. The only extra thing I wanted to mention here was the accounting piece. So a lot of financial institutions won't touch the cryptocurrencies because of the money laundering problems, but also the accounting issue is one that remains unsolved, and it's a headache that they don't want to deal with, right? A lot of the blockchain networks require you to trade in and out of cryptocurrencies. What that means is you might actually have capital gains or some sort of foreign exchange accounting problems that you're going to have to deal with. Do you want to add that complexity to your existing processes? Probably not. And that's what most of the larger players say. No, we're not going to touch that. We need more guidance from the IRS or IRD here in New Zealand. So just by using a normal currency, if I can call it that, that problem goes away because their existing systems can handle those. Okay, and the bit that I'd talk to here, the last point on there is that we provide programmatic access to be able to interact with the United States dollar using ACH and wire. So this is the US dollar, it's in the United States. We hope to be able to do the same in New Zealand soon. So essentially you would be able to do like a direct debit from your account through an API. That's the analog here in the US though, for now. And we're also working on debit cards, so that if you receive the Stronghold US dollar, now you can just go spend that off a debit card, right? And there'll be no currency conversion there because it's already in US dollar, unless you use it here, of course. Starts to get slightly technical here, but I'll try and keep it high level. The structure of the API, we have different parts that allow you to do different things depending on your business needs, right? We have this concept of a venue, which is essentially a different protocols in different contexts. And the only really interesting thing I think here is that some people run the blockchain in a public environment. So the Bitcoin public network, anyone can start up a Bitcoin node and start interacting. You don't necessarily know who you're interacting with, and you send money to any one of those participants on there, right? You could also run Bitcoin in a private network, right? So maybe a few banks, maybe BNZ and ASB want to run a private Bitcoin network to just send funds between each other. It's still the Bitcoin protocol. It's just running, just between them, and we couldn't interact with it, right? And that gives them some safety. So what the Stronghold APIs allow you to do is essentially define what you want to interact with depending on what your needs are. So if you want to interact with the whole public network, maybe you don't have money laundering concerns to worry about, go for it. But if you have a private network, or you want to start a private network because you can't have outsiders trading your assets, then that's fine, we can support that as well. We allow the creation of multi-currency wallets, depending on what the underlying blockchain protocol is. And these can hold both cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies. So let's say you were a business and you wanted to give your customers loyalty points. You could use these particular APIs to create digital wallets. Maybe you put it into a mobile application that you give to your users, and maybe they make some purchases with you in an existing application. You could use some of these ones like payments to send them maybe a custom digital token that represents some sort of loyalty value, right? Or e-miles would be a good example. So those are the sort of applications that you can start running with these. And one of the really interesting pieces that we're starting to see get used now is trading between different tokens. So not only can you send them between your users, you can now start trading. And these includes assets that are on public networks that are not issued by Stronghold. A future example that we'd like to see, so an example would be Novarti, a publicly listed company in Australia, recently announced that they are launching an Australian dollar stablecoin. They are going to be putting that on the public Stellar network. And this is where the network effects get interesting, right? So you could come on with Stronghold US dollar in the US and now send a payment and use a trade endpoint to have that automatically converted to the Novarti Australian dollar token, and you could have that withdrawn in Australia. So without Stronghold needing to even have a relationship with Novarti, you're now able to trade and move funds into Australia, right? Just think as those anchors start to move around the world, and there are already 5 or 6 different currencies available. There's Asian currencies, African, and the euro is on there as well. The network effect starts to really play a major effect, right? And that's what we're really interested in. For blockchains that do not have inbuilt trade, we will process the trades off-book. So an example is on Bitcoin. You have to go to a centralized venue. You have to come to a marketplace where buyers and sellers meet saying, I'm selling 10 Bitcoins for $5 Australian, whatever it is. Some of the blockchains allow you to do this directly inside the blockchain itself. You're putting those offers out, to the world. So in Stellar, we use that, but because Bitcoin doesn't have it, we provide that functionality for you. I just wanted to quickly walk through some potential use cases to give you an idea of how some of this could work. Cross-border payments, absolutely massive. I'm half Filipino through my mother's side, You know, my mother will drive to the post shop to send money through Western Union back to her family, right? There are billions of people doing this. It's a large amount of value moving into some of those countries. What you could do is create an account for the sender and receiver. That might be two different businesses, one on each end. You could use the Anchor APIs to have US dollar, let's say it was New Zealand dollar, direct debited from your account. Use Trade to trade between the two different tokens. So that would happen inside the Stellar network in this example. Use the payment endpoint to then have those funds sent, and then withdraw the funds using the API as well. Just a quick reminder about how small the cryptocurrency market is at the moment. It gets a lot of, it's very noisy, but it's actually really quite small, right? Here it is, sitting around 10 billion. New York Stock Exchange, 3 times as big, but the biggest one does seem to be Forex, right? And not all of that is cross-border payments, only a very small amount of it is. But the constant trade of assets is where the market volume is, okay? And cryptocurrencies are so far away from that. It's the traditional currencies that people are using now that are probably still going to be used for the next 10 years. Point of sale is another one that we think is interesting. So we currently have a pilot, and we're doing a digital wallet for them to replace a very cash-based industry in the United States. So there is the ability to take in that cash, or take the cash out of the transaction by issuing customers digital wallets. They pre-fund their accounts using the traditional banking system before they walk in that door. Use the account and Anchor to do that. The payment endpoint is used to accept the payment at position of sale. And then the Anchor, again, to withdraw those funds into the banking system again. And here's one that is quite cryptocurrency specific, but token issuers. Some of you may have heard of people raising absolutely crazy, ridiculous amounts of money by selling, seemingly made up value to people, right? So they would invent a new product that will come out at a later stage, and to generate funds for that project, they will sell you a token, and that token might give you discounts to use the product in the future, or it might give you a claim on future revenues. Some of them are even equities, so they're almost digital shares. What a lot of them have found is, now that they're starting to release their products, is they're alienating a lot of possible users, because they're sitting out in a digital cryptocurrency-based ecosystem, and their potential users, because a lot of these products are aimed at general consumers, they want to pay in US dollar or New Zealand dollar, right? They don't know how to buy Bitcoin, trade Bitcoin for whatever that company's special token is. How do you do that, right? So they're losing huge market share by doing that. So just use the APIs, have them send in US dollars, use the trade in the back end. You don't have to show your users that, to buy that magical token that you actually use in your product, but you just display normal currencies to your users, right? And be able to interact with that market that you're otherwise alienating. So that's a really exciting one that we're hoping to see a lot of usage for. Again, this was aimed at developers. So we have a site for our reference, so you can see what the API's calls are. So this is what you'd send your developers to start looking at. And any questions, go to happiness@stronghold.co. Starter tips for the developers: only send us the ID, don't send us your password. A lot of people have been sending us their password when they've tried to get started. Right, it's not a great idea. We are starting to build a community of developers. This was someone in Portugal, I can't quite remember, and he was the first developer to create community content. So he's been really helpful. We gave him some Stronghold US dollar. He made a little script that helps the developers integrate faster into our systems. So we're really keen to see more of that. Right. If anyone's interested in contributing more to the space, then just let us know, is really the call there. Okay. And that's all I wanted to cover. Any questions? For Tammy or I, right?
Sean, you mentioned your trading platform that you're working on.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the wild assumption that you'll be using your own technology for it.
Yes.
Does that mean I can use my credit card to go onto your platform and buy some cryptocurrency?
Okay, so the question there is about using a credit card, for instance, to buy cryptocurrency. And yes, we are using our own platform to power our systems. So technically, you could actually use our APIs to build another Stronghold trading platform. And that's okay. If someone wants to do that, that's fine. In terms of funding your account with credit card, we are currently working on a way for people to be able to do that. I'm not sure how long that's going to be. Currently, it's bank access only. Okay. Yeah. So the question there was about Lightning networks on top of Stellar. So one of the problems that we saw with blockchains earlier on was they are quite slow, right? And for things like micropayments, so payments down to thousandths of pennies, for instance, it's actually a use case we're working on right now, are impossible on blockchain because, or no, a lot of the blockchains, because you'd pay thousands of times that in transaction fees just to send that small amount of money, right? So there are some other technologies that are being built to allow people to do this and kind of connect them to the blockchain, right? Lightning Network on top of Stellar is called Starlight, and it has been released into beta, I believe, quite recently. Yeah. In the past fortnight, it went public. Yeah, so thousands of transactions per second is fine for cross-border payments, but for micropayments or even normal e-commerce, it's just that is still too slow. So the idea is that you'll do those millions of transactions on Starlight and you'll settle them back into Stellar. Exactly right. Yeah, so Stellar has simple smart contracts, is what they call it, built into their protocol. They're a lot more confined than what you'll find on Ethereum, but they serve a lot of use cases that are, again, verticalized for financial services, mainly around escrows, pre-funding, that sort of thing. Some of that, to make sure that works in Starlight, they brought over some of those features into it. So yes, some of those capabilities are still available in the payment channels. It's still a work in progress, though. Okay. Any other questions? Yep.
Is Stellar decentralized as
Yeah, so a lot of people ask, how decentralized is Stellar? It's a different form of consensus, right? With Bitcoin, anyone can run a node, and if you have more computing power, you have a bigger share in being able to confirm transactions. If you have enough computing power, you could take over the whole network, right? Stellar is quite different in that you choose which nodes you trust, right? So, and you often know who they are. So again, you trust IBM, you trust Stellars, you trust Strongholds, and that list forms your view of the network, right? What that means is that if it could kind of spread into two different groups. So it's not truly, maybe not strictly like 100% decentralized. It depends how you define that, I think. It's decentralized enough for our needs because we can still choose a variety of parties that aren't related and don't necessarily trust each other. But with any of these blockchain networks, there are still ways to take them over, right? Yes. Yeah, really good question. So regulation is obviously very important for a lot of these trading platforms, and we're seeing, in many countries, the regulators starting to enforce, right? And quite recently, a decentralized exchange by the name of Ether Delta. The founder was personally got told off, I suppose, to put it nicely, by the Securities Exchange Commission in the US. And that opened up some big questions for platforms built on decentralized exchanges. You will be regulated by any regulator who claims to regulate you, right? Obviously, being based and operating out of New Zealand, we want to make sure that we are engaging with the regulators. So one of the things I did when we first opened the office, which was around April, I think in May, I went up to Wellington to visit the FMA, right? We didn't actually start trading out of New Zealand until we had done that. We didn't release the Stronghold US dollar, which, despite being the US dollar, is still operated out of New Zealand without telling them what we were going to do. Having a dialogue with the regulators is really important, and we're going to continue to do that. So one of the things Tammy and I will be doing in the next few days, we'll be going up to Wellington and talking to legislators, actually, now. So yes, it's very important for us, and we're not looking forward to as in yay, but we are going to see a lot more enforcement coming out of the space soon. Yeah, and we think that some other players are in a more precarious situation. So I think our stablecoin has the most restrictive whitelisting. So a lot of the blockchain network stablecoins will only identify players when you deposit and withdraw back in and out of the real world. So when you do a deposit into their stablecoin, or when you withdraw money, we need to identify every single person that ever holds the stablecoin. So even if it's someone who's in the middle of a long chain of intermediaries and they've never actually used a bank or a credit card to buy or sell our token, we still want to identify who they are. And that's one of the reasons we love Stellar, because we can enforce that on the blockchain level. So it is physically impossible for someone on Stellar to send the Stronghold US dollar to someone that Stronghold hasn't given their blessing to, essentially. And KYC is the main component there.
Can the regulators access which you said the regulators built in?
Oh, so yeah. So what we mean is there's technology here that is applicable to making complying with the regulators and being able to provide them with more information a lot more easily, right? I am certain that there are regulators around the world that have built tools to look into. Well, we know they have actually. They have built tools that track Bitcoin transactions, for instance. And we will imagine they will continue to do that, which is great, because what that means is they can get the information directly instead of burdening the businesses to be providing reports, right, which is quite an expensive and time-consuming thing to do. So this stuff's great because they can get it themselves. Right, so just last week, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, which does the worldwide sanctions, so they have the naughty boys and girls list. And it's full of, Osama bin Laden would used to be on there and all those sorts of bad actors, right? You can't send money to them. Entire countries are on that thing, like Iran, right? Because they're a state enemy of the US. They added Bitcoin addresses on last week. They had said for months and months they were going to, but they finally did it. And so that's the first time I've actually seen them take a really big step directly into blockchain technology and almost given a persona to those random numbers that generate the address, which is really quite interesting. And more compliance work for everyone, but I think that it will actually simplify things. Because they can't always identify who holds the Bitcoin addresses, but at least now exchanges and other businesses, they don't necessarily have to anymore. They just say, okay, that address is tainted, we don't touch it anymore. So I welcome things like that. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Well, if there's any more questions, feel free to come up to Tammy and I. We'll be around for the rest of the night, or any of the team that are here.
If you could put your hands together for Juliana, Yes, who did a fantastic job organizing this event. We really appreciate it. I mean, it's really nice to just kind of walk in and everything be done, and she's the magic behind tonight. So thank you for coming, and I'm sure there's plenty of drink tickets left, so go grab a drink at the bar. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if you want to claim your stellar lumens, you can copy this QR code. Oh, there's the link. That QR code actually goes to the link where you're supposed to claim your stellar lumens. And we can send that to the Stellar Development Foundation, and they can, fund your wallets with stellar lumens. All right. Again, please feel free to have drinks at the bar, and thank you so much for coming.